Hey guys, welcome to the video. As you can probably tell, I'm doing something a little bit different this time. I'm actually going to talk about Avengers Endgame and how it ruins the Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity. So, you've been warned, this is about Avengers Endgame, and if you've not seen it right now, this video is full of spoilers. So I'm going to give you a chance right now to click off. Okay? Still here? Great. Now, where can we start? Well, I'm gonna just say it's an amazing movie. If you have not seen it yet, you should definitely go watch it. I give it a 9.5 out of 10. As a fan, I just loved all the stuff that they did for us, and I gotta say, it's got some of the best done action scenes that comic book movies have, and it's been an awesome ride watching the whole 22 movies, but I gotta say, after I watched it and I thought about it, there was a lot of things in the movie that I was like, oh boy, they've really ruined the continuity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And again, way that they do this is time travel. So a lot of people assumed before the movie came out there was going to be some kind of time travel shenanigans, and they're right. So as soon as Scott Lang gets back from the quantum realm, he goes to the Avengers HQ. He talks with Captain America and he talks with Black Widow, and he says to them, you know, I can't believe what's going on, because he's been going around the world and he's seen all these people that have disappeared. He saw his own name. And then when he talks about the time that he had in the quantum realm versus the time that has passed in the real world. So the real world, the snap, and when the movie takes place is 5 years later. And then he's only been in there for 5 hours. So that's 1 year for every hour that he was in there that passed. Now, they then, go through some shenanigans and try and, figure out time travel. You see Professor Hulk, as some people are calling him, and, they get into a few MCU jokes, but there's a key little part before they start their little time traveling tests where you see them having an argument like, oh, Back to the Future, there's like, this time travel rule and this time travel rule, and Bruce Banner says this, and the directors and the writers, they try and make you think, oh, they're gonna come up with their own rules, cool, we can just ignore all the other stuff, but then they break their own rules, and the movie's like logic, when you think about it, it just completely, absolutely falls apart. I'm not even kidding. When you actually think about some of the stuff they're doing, it is silly, it is stupid. And let's start with 2012, the earliest that they originally decide to go back in time to. So the Avengers takes place during 2012, and they use that event, the Battle of New York, to try and get 3 of the Infinity Stones. They tried to get the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone. They tried to get Loki's Scepter, which is the Mind Stone. And they tried to get the Time Stone. Now, Doctor Strange actually took place in 2017, so it's the Ancient One that they're trying to get the Time Stone from. And this is where they have a little bit of a conversation. And the little bit of a conversation between Bruce Banner and the Ancient One is, oh, if you take out any of the Infinity Stones from this time, then you create this new branch, and it's shown off as like a dark little flow of time that's gonna, be negative, have no consequences on the other universe's time, which they're saying is Bruce's like timeline, but her timeline will be wrecked because they didn't have the stone to protect them. And then Bruce is like, oh, we'll return the stones to you at the exact time that we took them, everything will be hunky-dory, you see the black time flow disappear and the golden little time is there. And then, he mentions a little bit about Doctor Strange giving the stone. She's like, oh, he's meant to be the best of us. And so she gives it to him, and they botched the actual Tesseract bit up. They do get the Mind Stone, but they don't get the Space Stone. What actually happens is Loki has it drop at his feet because Stark fumbles it and it falls out of a closed case that Stark was carrying away when Hulk came down the stairs and opened it. So Loki just basically picks it up and boom, disappears like Thanos does. And we don't see that again. So they go outside, they argue a little. Scott's pissed. He's like, "You've messed this up. We couldn't afford to basically fail. We've got two of the stones. Okay, brilliant." But then, you know, Tony's like talking to Steve and they're like, "Oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that." And, you know, Scott's just left there hanging. He's like, okay, I guess I'll just go back. So what we have happen next is that they travel back in time from that point again. Okay, guys? So they travel back to 1970, okay, into where the Tesseract was stored and where Hank Pym was working on his Pym particle, so they can steal the Tesseract from the 1970s because they fudged it up in 2012 and only got 2 out of the 3 stones, and then they want to also steal a bit more Pym particles so they can go back to the future. To quote the movie that they say doesn't have the right time rules, or we're not using their time rules. Okay, so they go back to 1970, and I'm gonna actually forget 1970 for a second, and I'm gonna skip a year forward to 2013 because there's actually 3 teams that went into the past. There's the 2012 team, which was Ant-Man, Bruce Banner, aka Professor Hulk. There was Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. So they went to retrieve the 3 stones in New York. Then we have Thor and Rocket, who went to 2013 during the events of Thor: The Dark World to get the Reality Stone, which is, they have a little bit of an argument. It's not a stone, it's a sludge, blah blah blah. But they go for the Reality Stone essentially. And what happens is you see that Rocket gets the stone because Thor, has his little moment, goes off to meet his mum, talking to her, and then not only do they get the Reality Stone, they also come back with Thor holding Mjolnir, okay, which shout out to Captain America for the kick-ass scene. That was amazing. Okay, so they do get the Reality Stone from 2013 during Thor: The Dark World events, and we in that scene see Loki in a cell. Okay, now this is very important. You're going to need to remember Loki was in the Asgard prison cells during 2013. So you're thinking he escaped with the Tesseract, but they must have caught him because he's in the actual prison cell during 2013. Remember that. That's going to be important because they goofed it up, and I'll show you why later on. Now let's also go to when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 takes place, because Volume 1 is when Quill, aka Star-Lord, originally stole the Power Stone from the orb, okay? And it's also the same year that they decide that they're gonna try to get the Soul Stone. So Nebula and War Machine, okay, Rhodey, they go to get the Power Stone. Rhodey succeeds in getting the Power Stone, and then he's about to go back in time, tap in his little GPS, and then Nebula's also about to do it when she spazzes out because she was caught on the little, I don't know, it's like some people are saying it's like a Nebula link, that she's got like an iCloud, her details or something uploaded. It's the most completely stupid plot device they could have ever have thought of doing, and they try and use that as to justify how Nebula from 2014 travels back and replaces the 2023 Nebula. Okay, so they now know, okay, Thanos knows that they've come from 2023, okay, which is the year that the Endgame takes place, and come back to 2014, okay, and he sees all the memories, he sees everything that's happened, and then he's going to travel forward in time. Again, very, very important, because I'm going to go into that and I'm going to say how they messed that up as well. So she gets kind of trapped in 2014, okay, with her getting abducted, and she tries to warn the others, Natasha and Clint. Oh, Thanos knows, he knows we're here, blah blah blah, and they're off, not able to hear that, and they're getting the Soul Stone. And this is another important part that you need to really pay attention to. So they go and they're met by the Red Skull, don't know who he is, blah blah, and they look to get the same information that Thanos did from, you know, him when he was sacrificing Gamora for the Infinity Stone, Soul Stone during Infinity War. So they go through the same up and down. Somebody needs to sacrifice themselves, somebody that you love. I don't think they built up enough of a relationship, but whatever. Natasha sacrifices herself, she dies, Barton wakes up, just like Thanos, in his right hand, he's got the Soul Stone. He returns to 2023 with the others, and they're all like, where's Natasha? Oh, she's dead. It can't be undone. And that's that. And then they build the little glove, the gauntlet, haha, Rocket, goes boom, tries to shit him up. But then you've got the whole like, oh, I've got to be the one. It's giving off too much gamma. I'm going to snap them. So what he does is Tony tells him you're going to basically snap your finger and you're going to return everybody that was dusted to 2023. Okay? Remember, 2023 is when he's returning. So they all had got dusted in 2018, but he doesn't want them returning to 2018. He wants them all to be returned to 2023. So them guys are losing like 5 years of their life, and again, that's another huge mess that's going to be caused from this. So they snap everybody back. They have a huge end fight. Thanos is beating everybody up. He sees the gauntlet. He goes for it. This was 2014 Thanos, remember? Okay. Now, Tony makes the play in the end where he goes for the gauntlet, strips it very quickly. It's like a blink and you'll miss it moment of all the stones, puts them into his right hand, says that iconic line, I am Iron Man, snaps his fingers, and Thanos and all his army from 2014 get snapped and dusted. Okay, so it's pretty safe to say, using the movie's logic, that Thanos and his army from 2014, okay, were completely decimated by the snap that Tony Stark did. And remember, it's important to remember these details because they do matter. So he snapped Thanos from 2014. Gamora from 2014 has been talking to Nebula from 2023 because they've now got that relationship that maybe she was always looking for. But you have to remember, Gamora never met the Guardians of the Galaxy. She was just filled in on Nebula that this is what you did in your future, blah blah blah. So she's never experienced those. So this Gamora is not the Gamora we know through the experiences that she had and the way that she came together with Quill in the relationship. So that Gamora goes MIA by the end of the movie. Nebula from 2014 is killed by Nebula from 2023. Now that's a really important detail, okay? And the reason it's really important is because you have to remember, in like movies like Terminator, they try and go back in time to kill John Connor when he's a kid and blah blah blah. But the past self of Nebula being killed doesn't erase the Nebula from 2023. So in their rules, they're like saying you can kill your past self and not suffer. So there was no quote unquote grandfather paradox in the MCU. Okay, so they're like trying to use those sorts of things as like a bit of a cop out. But then, okay, interesting little thing happens towards the end of the movie, okay? You have Steve with a case full of all the Infinity Stones. He has the Space Stone, the Mind Stone, the Soul Stone, the Reality Stone, the Power Stone, and the Time Stone. And as a little bonus, he takes Mjolnir with him. So he's returning the Space Stone to 1970. He's returning the Mind Stone and the Time Stones to 2012, the Reality Stone to Thor the Dark World's 2013. He's returning the Power Stone back to when Quill originally found it, and he's returning the Soul Stone at the same point in time that Quill would have got, the Power Stone. So, a couple of things happen with those stones, okay, which I'm gonna now break down for you a little bit more, and you're gonna be like, oh wow, that is stupid, that does ruin continuity. So first of all, when they took the Space Stone, it was a cube, it was a tesseract. They turned it into the stone that we see Thanos use in Infinity War. They also have it in a gauntlet like that of their own in 2023. So it's not in a cube when they return it. So how the hell do they turn it into a Tesseract again? And if they don't turn it into a Tesseract, it's going to look weird. So it whacks out the events of 1970. If he was returning the Space Stone to 1970, not as a cube but as a stone, how come that didn't affect the 2012 part where Loki picks up a cube? So again, the movie's falling down on its logic and it's ruining its own continuity with basic errors, okay? And you're going to be like, oh, well, these are all different timelines, and now, okay, is why I'm going to explain to you why that's not true, okay? So Steve delivers all these things back, and he decides to stay in the past. So approximately, it's the 1950s. You can tell by the way that the houses look, the way that the cars look, the way that they're dressed. So Steve's gone back to just after the war to 1950 to be with Peggy Carter. Okay, he didn't go back to time to be, an Avenger in 2023. He stayed there. He built a life. He married what we assume is Peggy Carter, because the way that they show it is they show his ring, they talk him showing to Sam, giving the shield, which, by the way, where the hell was he hiding the shield? Because he must have come back to 2023 and got the shield and then given it, because we don't see him take the shield with him, so he must have hidden it somewhere where he was going to find it again, okay, which great fan service, but logically what the hell happened? So he's now returned to 2023 in the same timeline as the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, events. So we know it's a single timeline. Okay, that's the single timeline that proves that these events all take place in their own timeline. He didn't travel in time to get to them, and we know he didn't travel in time to get to them, because if he traveled in time, he would have ended up on the time pad that Banner set up. He won't be sitting on a bench by the lake as Old Man Steve, okay, or Old Man Captain America, whichever way you want to say it. He wasn't there. So now we've got to understand that when did Steve actually return the Soul Stone? Did he return the Soul Stone just after Clint got it? And if he did, how do you return a Soul Stone? There's no, literally in both movies, Infinity War and Endgame, the same thing happens. They sacrifice somebody they love and they get zipped into the sky, they wake up in the water, they've got it in their right hand. How the hell do you unget a soul stone and put it back into this vacuum? There's literally no logical way that they've shown this could even happen. So it would have made more sense that Steve went back to the events during that time when Barton was going to sacrifice himself or whatever, and then they decide that no, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to stop just before, she sacrifices herself. I'm going to take her with me, okay? And I'm going to tell Barton to take the stone, act like Natasha's gone, okay? And can't be done, and the events play out exactly as they do in Endgame. And then in the end, on the launch pad, they actually would have had Natasha come back instead of Steve. So Steve still got his little happy ending, but Black Widow came back and joined the team, just after they've beaten Thanos. And this leads back to 2014 Thanos, who went to 2023, who they've snapped. So if they're returning all the stones back to the same timeline, it means that they've already killed Thanos in 2014, so he never sacrificed Gamora, okay? And he would have never had the opportunity to have done the events of the snap. Now, some try and say, oh, they're different timelines, that's what they're affecting, you can't change your own past, or your past becomes your future, and blah, blah, blah. But then, like I said, Captain America being in the same timeline that they're in as an old man shows that the timelines are one and they're linked. So whatever they've done in their past has to affect their future. Now, that's the main way that they ruin their own continuity. They ruin the continuity of the Avengers. They ruin the continuity of, Age of Ultron. If you think about it, the Mind Stone actually is not in the scepter anymore. So when the Mind Stone was being used to experiment on, the twins, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, it would have been a stone instead. Those little things there, they're just out of place, and you can definitely see how they've opened up a can of worms. So the next big problem that they have is going forward in the future. So Spider-Man Far From Home is coming out next. Black Panther is getting a sequel, as is Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy. So now we need to figure out, when are these movies taking place? You can't have a Black Panther sequel probably take place before Infinity War, because the events of Infinity War and Black Panther are so closely linked together. I mean, you'd have a very small time frame and gap to put that story in, but I guess it would be possible. And then Doctor Strange as well. Do you put the story before the events of Infinity War? And Spider-Man Far From Home, if they're putting it, before the events of Infinity War, some people are trying to come up with a theory that the bus that Peter was coming back on with the rest of his schoolmates was the bus coming back from Far From Home. Then why is Ned bald in Far From Home trailers, but then he suddenly has a full head of hair in Infinity War? I'm just saying, hair don't grow that quick. Humans would know if there was any miracle cure. So that's then got to take place right after they come back in 2023. So how's the world, suddenly gone back to normal when 3.5 billion people or so have just come back into the world? In Endgame, Scott comes back and he looks around the world of what's going on, and it looks post-apocalyptic. It's absolutely horrendous how it looks. He's, seen all these, things that look like a world affected by the loss of 3.5 billion, people that have probably had depression, suicide, and blah blah blah, that are just dealing with all this crap and the fallout that happened from the people that they lost, and they were coming to terms with it for 5 years. Now all of a sudden, like, these people are back. How's the world going to cope with them? So they try to make Spider-Man Far From Home look really normal. The world's not post-apocalyptic and everything, but there's a huge problem now going forward. Like, how do you now sort the MCU timeline out to where you're going to make everything look normal again. How much time is going to pass? How do you introduce people like the X-Men, Silver Surfer, Galactus, all these things into the MCU that we've known and come to love when you so badly botched up the actual timelines of all the Marvel movies that have come so far. So as a fan, I loved the Endgame movie. I loved everything that it gave. But when you think about just how a single movie's events chronologically and through time affect everything, it's ridiculous. Yeah, some people are like, oh, well, Peggy had a husband, she had a kid, she had, a son and a daughter, so that could have been Steve. It all comes around. It was meant to be, but there's so many questions there why they did one thing and didn't do another. How come this didn't affect that, but then this is in the same timeline? So they've really botched up and ruined their continuity completely when you think about it. There's a lot of other things as well they've done. So, from my point of view, the way I see it is that the time shenanigans that they're doing, they try to separate them. So they're like, this timeline's here, this timeline's here, this timeline's here, and they're going to try and claim they're like maybe 5-6 different timelines that they were trying to go into and mess around with, and then return the stones into different timelines. And that would be cool if it wasn't for the fact that Steve goes back in time and then ends up in the same timeline in the future. So how do they do all of that without messing up the timelines? You can't return the Power Stone to Quill at the same time as when they lost it, because Nebula's already been taken. Future Nebula's already been taken by that point by Thanos. Thanos has already skipped to the future. So 2014, Thanos is in 2023. Like I said, very important. He gets snapped. Therefore, he can't go through the events of Infinity War. Infinity War never should have taken place. Nobody should have got snapped. So it's really weird to think that an amazing movie like Endgame that does so much right has such a fundamental flaw in the way that the writers and the directors probably came up with. How do we go back in time and not screw everything up, and then manage to basically screw everything up from multiple movies that would affect multiple things? So honestly, guys, I don't know how they're going to fix it. Kevin Feige is always held up as this like mastermind who's got this really big plan. He's going to be giving, all this overall story thing, but I think Marvel kind of shit the bed, to be perfectly honest with you, with this, and I have no idea what the hell they're going to do to try and fix this. It's a mess right now. They already had like a small inconsistency when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, and it was like trying to be placed around the Avengers 2012 sequence, and then they did the time skip. They're like, so when does it really take place? Nobody really knew. But this one is just so much worse because of how many more issues that you've got with the timeline. From 1970 all the way to 2023, you've got all these pivotal scenes that have got an effect on the timeline. So now Gamora from 2014 is 2023. She's MIA, doesn't have the same experiences. Natasha is still dead. So that is like, she's not coming back at all. But then there's a solo movie that they're gonna do. So when are they doing the solo movie? They're doing Wanda and Vision. Vision was dead, he never came back. Some people say, well, Shuri, now she's back, she probably saved his details. Okay, so she can maybe recreate Vision, but then why, Elizabeth Olsen saying, oh, it's set in the 1950s, the WandaVision TV series, so how do they end up in 1950 from 2023, potentially 2024? So all these Marvel movies, when they now take place, nobody, like, can say when the hell they're supposed to be taking place. Because the key characters with sequels that we already know, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, they have to do them, logically after 2023 when Endgame's events happen. But, you know, if they try to do X-Men, what timeline year are they going to be able to insert them into? Are they going to, introduce the Fantastic Four and say Reed Richards and the rest of them didn't get snapped, in that timeline period, and during the 5 years that the time jump happened before Endgame, the Fantastic Four started operating? If they did, why didn't they show up for the fight in Endgame? It's a mess, guys, and I'm going to be honest with you, as a fan, I liked a lot of the stuff that they tried to do in Endgame, and as a fan, I loved watching it. Like I said, 9.5 out of 10. I really, loved the fan moments. But when I thought about it, and I thought, how are they gonna fix this? I'm really worried. I don't think they realize how badly they messed it up. They're probably gonna make $1 bazillion. They're breaking all the records, so I don't think they care. They've made their money, and they're gonna make hundreds of millions or more, if not billions more. But how do you fix the timeline? I don't know. You guys, if you have any ideas, please write in the comments below. If you've liked the video, thank you very much for watching. Hope you'll like, subscribe, and ring the bell for post notifications. And this was a little bit different from what I usually do, so I'm going to try and do some of these videos here and there. It's not going to be a permanent thing, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.